Hello and welcome to episode six, no six episode six of Influence Me. This is my series of interviews with the most influential people in enterprise communications. Today I've got a fantastic guest. It is Ian Jacobs. He's the vice president of research director at Forrester. And I've known Ian for a long time, so let's bring him on without any further ado. Welcome, Ian.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks for having me.
And thanks for being here. So what I want to do is, but let's put your Twitter handle up there. Ian G. Jacob. What's the G stand for?
Glenn. Also, it stands for I was late to Twitter, and therefore whoever Ian Jacobs without the G has got their.
Okay. All right. That's a consolation prize. You get the G. Okay. Well, we got a lot to cover, partly because I've known you for a long time. You're like one of the OGs, I guess, because I remember you were one of the very first people I interacted with. I think you were at Ovum, and that was like even late in your career. I mean, I don't even, let's see, that must have been, I don't know, 2010, something like that. Sound right?
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, Forrester is my fifth analyst firm, which is bizarre but true. Although I've been here almost 9 years, so I kind of feel like I've settled after not settled like settling for less, but settled like putting down roots.
I'm glad you clarified that. You could get yourself in trouble there.
I know, apparently, yeah.
So we got a lot of topics to cover here. You are one of the more social of the analysts. Well, the analysts are introverted people, but I think I got to see this side of you the most clearly. I think it was in the VIA event in New Orleans. And there we got to discover all kinds of alcohol and music. And in fact, I realized that you were kind of a man of the world when you introduced me to the famous cocktail of New Orleans. Do you know what that is?
If I was choosing it, it was probably the Sazerac.
That's exactly what it was. Exactly what it was. So the Sazerac, and so I've got a couple questions here for you about alcohol in general and cocktails in general. Let's see. So do you know what's in the Sazerac?
Sazerac rye.
I had to look it up. Sazerac rye whiskey is or there's another option according to the but Sazerac rye whiskey is indeed specified. There's one other bourbon that's acceptable. Do you know what it is?
I don't.
It's the Buffalo Trace bourbon, which I associate with United clubs. But
I don't know about the bourbon. Like the rye has that pepperiness that you want in a drink. There's a wash of absinthe, and then beyond that, I have no idea.
Lemon peel. You forgot the lemon peel. It's like the most beautiful part of the drink. Okay. Well, you're a man of money cocktails, so let's figure this out here. Because I remember, I think after we had the obligatory Sazerac, I think we moved on to old fashions that evening. What's in an old fashioned?
So we're going to get into the rye versus bourbon debate.
The only thing I knew about rye before I met you, by the way, was the line in the American Pie song, drinking whiskey and rye. But it's a real drink, and it's in bars. And every time I see a bottle of rye, I always think of you.
Oh, well, there we go. I mean, it's considered kind of old man whiskey now. That line always drives me and rye drinkers crazy because rye is whiskey. So I don't know what drinking whiskey and rye means. Drinking whiskey and rye whiskey, I guess. Anyway, I like rye, but you can use some bourbon. Bitters, usually Angostura, but I have a lovely Christmas present from my wife of cocoa bitters that I've been using in mine. Sugar, and you can either muddle sugar, or if you make simple syrup, you can add simple syrup, however you dissolve the sugar in it. In this case, usually an orange peel as the rim. And if you like them, and I happen to, the real maraschino cherries, like Luxardo cherries, plop in one of those with a little bit of the maraschino juice, which is basically toxic sugar water. So if you do that, cut down on the simple syrup or sugar that you're going to add so it's not overly sweet. At least that's what my old fashions are. When I'm lazy, I sometimes just use a mixer, though. Oh, now you're muted somehow. What happened, Dave? I don't know what's going on. I'm supposed to be the expert. No, wait, you're supposed to be the expert on the unified communications. Ah, well, I can vamp if you can hear me. I can pontificate about Rye.
Better.
I can hear you again.
Okay, I switched microphones. I don't know what happened there, but thank you for putting up with that. What kind of glass does an old fashioned go in?
Double rocks glass, please.
No.
I've got one of these cool ones that's not like super fancy. I think it came from Crate and Barrel, but it's like a glass blower blew a bubble into the bottom of the glass, so there's hollow space, which is just kind of cool when you're looking at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, double rocks.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Oh, yeah, those are fancy. Yeah, those are good. Now, my theory is, most people don't like the taste of whiskey, and they don't naturally like the taste of whiskey. I mean, you learn to like it, and so the way that you learn to like it is you put a bunch of sugar and water and stuff like that in it, or fruit juices, and so then, of course, as you become an expert, a man of the world like yourself, you get away from the sugars and the fruit juices. There are a couple manly drinks though that have fruit juice in them. Are you familiar with? I think it's called snake bite.
No, isn't that some kind of cider and beer thing?
Snake bite is Canadian whiskey and a dash of lime juice.
Okay.
And that's served in a shot glass. But I think there's it's pretty similar to a whiskey sour, right?
Well, so whiskey sour has also a divisive question, which is not the bourbon versus rye, but it's egg white versus no egg white. I happen to like the body that the egg white.
Yeah, that's the whole point of it.
Right. But people like them without the egg white. But yeah, there's bourbon, usually lemon juice. I have had them with lime juice in the past. Again, with the sugar, simple syrup, and then the egg white with a little bit of bitters.
In the same kind of glass.
If you do egg white, no, you want a coupe glass because you like to see the float of that like stiff peaks that the egg white has.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I would have gotten in trouble there. I recently learned about a drink called the Godfather. Have you heard of this one?
No, but it sounds good.
It sounds sophisticated, doesn't it? Blend of bourbon or whiskey with amaretto.
Of course, with the amaretto, like it's got to be the Italian for the Godfather. I don't know if I would like that. I don't know. Have you and I ever sat down and tried to drink like the super peaty single malts?
Not with you. I've done that, and
Okay.
I don't like the super peaty, at least when in the single malt. Yeah, I was in Japan at a wine tasting thing. No, I think it was in Dubai, and they had Japanese. No, it must have been Japan, and they had all these Scotch whiskeys, and they were really proud of this one that was the most peaty whiskey that you could get, and it was terrible, just terrible.
Well, I was thinking about that though when you were saying you kind of grow out of the sweeter drinks. Like that's about the extreme that I have gone. It's like the over peated, where it's the equivalent of like those triple IPAs that are like the Hop Monster and the Hoposaurus Rex.
Yep.
It's like that where there's one note, it's super strong, and I kind of learned to love it. So yeah.
Now, I don't drink a lot of cocktails. What I do drink, which isn't very often, I usually just get a whiskey or something kind of simple, single malt, like you say. But I'm always just enamored and impressed with people like yourselves who just know their way around a bar. And when you order stuff, the bartender smiles and knows exactly what to do, or at least they act like they know exactly what to do. The martini is the cop-out one because that's the James Bond one. But do you know what a dirty martini is?
Martini with the olive juice in it. But I know it intellectually, but I don't like martinis. So
yeah, that's basically it's olive juice and olives. Yeah, but otherwise it's just a martini. But all right, I actually know you drink beer too because you actually came to visit me in my home. But I no longer own, but you came and visited me when you were in town for the American Beer Festival in Colorado. And so I know you're a beer person too. Do you remember the beer festival?
Yes, I do. Although, in all honesty, it's probably the drunkest I've ever been and ever seen some of our mutual acquaintances too.
Yeah, well, that was fun. That was fun. And I'm not the beer guy of Boulder. There's another guy in Boulder that is notoriously a beer and turtle guy. Um, but
But yeah, I'd never been before, and I had promised myself that I was going to make it an annual event, and then pandemic smacked that plan.
yeah. Well, you can go back now. I couldn't join you that year. I was able to visit you. I was able to see you the day before. I think you went. Maybe it was the day after. I can't recall.
That was the day after.
But it was I was heading out of town and it just didn't work out. But that is a fun event to do with friends because it's a lot of. I mean, you get these little glasses. A lot of crowds, and you're trying all these. Do you remember any beers that stood out? Do you have a kind of favorite beer?
So I do have a favorite type of beer.
Yeah.
Sort of related to my taste in whiskeys, actually, which are like the very large imperial stouts. So I'm drinking things that are like 13, 14% ABV, sometimes even more.
Yeah, there's one actually in Boulder, the Maharaj, something like that, made by Avery Brewery, which is like super imperial. Yeah. Avery Brewery is a great brewery, and they're here in New Jersey. What I find surprising, because I've lived in Colorado for 33 years, and there's just I think Boulder's got like 50 microbreweries and like that. And as I go to the liquor store here and I try to find local beers in New Jersey, and they're all Colorado beers. It's like I've got no problem finding Colorado beers here, but I found a handful of local ones here.
Well, if you can, stock up for when I come visit. If you can find the Oscar Blues 1050 barrel aged one,
yep.
I had that in Boulder that same trip at the brew pub downtown in Boulder, but I can't find that in cans.
Oh, that's a shame.
California. So
yeah, the Oscar Blues has also got pretty good ribs. Barbecue is another thing that Boulder's got a little bit of an edge on over New Jersey, and I'm actually really missing them. I sold all my barbecue equipment, and I'm thinking about rebuying it all. And I've been watching all the YouTube channels where they do the slow cooking and all that stuff, and it's like oh my god, it's so addicting. Okay, all right, enough about liquor. I said New Orleans is about liquor and music. I remember you took us off Bourbon Street. You took us to another part of New Orleans.
Frenchman Street.
What'd you call it?
Frenchman Street.
Yes, Frenchman Street. That was a fantastic area. And it was great because there were so many of us there. I mean, I remember Elko was there. There was a number of us there. I can't remember everybody who was there, but jazz is fun. And of course, New Orleans associated with jazz.
Indeed.
In blues.
Although we saw a great blues band that night too.
Yeah, it was fantastic. New Orleans is a great town for. Hear me now. If you want to know where to have your next analyst event, New Orleans, you can't go wrong. There's actually several there, and they're always great. But I don't think blues or jazz is your primary music. Is that accurate?
Well, blues, no. Although I listen to John Lee Hooker or Howlin' Wolf or whatever every once in a while. But I grew up with jazz. My dad is a jazz musician, but it was never like my love. Although there's some of that like flowy Euro jazz that I listen to when I'm writing or editing. Gato Barbieri kind of helps with that. So there are elements of it or particular artists or albums, but no. On the whole, it's probably not the thing I'm listening to the most often.
We got here. I didn't catch this right away. We got a comment from Daniel. You guys in the same house talking about man drinks and beer. Oh, now I was too late with this one. The wall colors are eerily similar. Yes, that's what happens when you have. Actually, you got some color on your walls. I don't have color on my walls, but.
I've got this hospital green.
But so what is is your primary music? If you inherited some jazz and blues, but what did you actually develop yourself?
So I think you're hinting towards what I used to. So I used to be a DJ in the 90s at a club in San Francisco, and it was a night for dub reggae. So dub, a little roots reggae, a little bit of dance hall. And I still listen to a lot of that. But my tastes are much broader than that. But I did go very, very deep for about 10 years into Jamaican and British and American music from probably 1970 through about 1985, that era of
Yep. That was the time to do it.
dub and reggae. Those were like the years for me.
No, that was where I was looking to go. I was a DJ in college. I don't really have a DJ voice. You have a great DJ voice. Some people have great DJ voices. I keep on telling Jamie Stark at Microsoft that he has to become a DJ. But when you tell people they should be a DJ, they assume it's an insult, and it's like it's not an insult. It's an insult if you were an actor, but it's not an. Yeah. But anyway, not if you're a Microsoft developer. But I don't I somehow missed reggae, and I don't really understand how I missed it, but I think I would have liked it. I'm not 100% sure here. I like the Police. I like the Police, and I really like Hamilton on Broadway, and so that's considered hip hop. And so I think reggae is somewhere in the middle there. Is that right? So it seems like it would be logical. I would have liked it if I would have got into it.
So the Police were kind of my entry point too, to some degree, although my jazz musician dad also introduced me to Bob Marley and Peter Tosh and stuff like that. But mostly when he heard me listening to the Police, it was one of those, if you like that, you should know where that came from. And so I went backwards. Would you like it? I mean, the politics are a mix of great revolutionary politics and abysmal homophobia and misogyny. So you kind of have to like take the awful with the very interesting. But the liberation politics are great. And then if you're listening to dub where there may or may not be any intelligible lyrics, you've got to like the fact that it's playing with the offbeat rhythms, right? So the difference between like clapping on 1 and 3 or clapping on 2 and 4, right? You got to get into a kind of a different mode and mindset. And dub in particular is a producer's art. So it's like yes, I think you might like that because it's almost like a techno nerds music, because they take the core tracks and mess around with them in the studio and add reverb and add sound effects and add delay and loop things. And it gets sometimes very spacey and sometimes very cluttered, but it's definitely like the producer doing it. So yeah, I think math rock and dub are kind of good for industry analysts, even though I may be the only one I know who actually likes the damn stuff.
Now, tell me a little more about being a DJ. So you were a DJ in San Francisco in the 70s.
No, 70s. No, I meant I was listening to music made then.
Made in the 70s. Okay, all right. So when were you a DJ? What years were you a DJ?
94 to 99.
Oh, okay. That's not nearly as interesting. But tell me about because DJ in San Francisco in the 90s. Were you like was this a popular club or was this a small club?
So it's a popular, well, it's gone now, but
it was a celebrity.
It was a popular club. Our night was Sunday nights. So on 3-day weekends, where Monday was the holiday, it was hugely packed, like packed to the gills, sweaty, crazy. Most other Sunday nights, it was pretty mellow. We'd get 100 people coming through, 150 people, something like that, coming through in the course of a night. It was a club upstairs from a bar, and I was part of a DJ collective. There were about 6 of us, so it was like a combination of 2 different DJs. We brought in a lot of famous reggae artists, producers who would come and perform. We had our own staple of toasters, i.e. the equivalent of rappers who would like do their thing over whatever music we were laying down. It was good. And yes, before you ask, you could get a contact high just being in the room. It was that kind of crowd because
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
And smoking in clubs was still legal. There's that. I mean, what people
yeah, of
were
course.
smoking was not legal back then. Now it would be. Then it wasn't. But
Okay.
that's funny. The thing that you smoke is now legal, but the fact that you smoke it inside is no longer legal.
Secondhand
Either
cigarettes.
way, you're not going to be able to do it legally.
Now, so you were a celebrity in San Francisco, and how did you go from that to being an analyst?
So I was a tech journalist while being a DJ. So I had to wake up Monday morning and go to work, and go write about technology. I have only been truly prescient once or twice in my life, and once was seeing that the boom in real estate in San Francisco in the late 90s meant that there was a bubble that was going to pop.
Yep.
And so my wife and I quit our jobs, sold our place, when traveling around the world for 18 months. When we came back, we wasn't sure whether I wanted to work full time or what I wanted to do. So I started freelancing, and I freelanced an article. And for those who don't know, journalists are often given the names of analysts by technology vendors.
Sure.
They go talk to this person, he's been briefed. So I was given the name of an analyst by one of these vendors, and the guy just didn't know anything. I knew more than he did, and it wasn't even my area. So I was like, I think I could do that.
You can
So
do that.
I actually wrote
This
some.
guy doesn't know anything. I could do that. Sure.
Right. So I wrote a letter to the company that guy worked for and said I could do that. Unbeknownst to me, they had put an ad in the New York Times back when people did such things, an employment ad. So they thought I was applying for a job that they had posted, and they actually interviewed me.
Yeah.
They didn't realize how cocky I was being. And I got hired. So I transitioned from journalist to analyst. And the joke that I used to tell regularly about that when people asked is, yeah, I used to get paid to pretend I don't have an opinion, and now I get paid to pretend I do have an opinion. That's the difference between journalists and analysts.
Well, you were an analyst, like I said, you were an analyst. I met you at Ovum, and then my phone's going crazy here. Sorry about that. And then it's probably people telling me my mic's muted or something. But but you went to the dark side twice. Once to a vendor, as I recall, you went to Genesis for a while.
I did.
And then you came back to the analyst community. And then, this would be more debatable, but then you became a manager. You went into management. Do you miss not writing your own reports anymore, or do you write any reports?
I do write some reports. Yeah, I do, but they tend to be sort of high level overviews of a topic, like what you need to think about for business planning for next year across a big wide swath, rather than digging in and talking about why LLMs are going to ruin customer service for the next 5 years before they save it, or whatever pontification I might try and do as an analyst focused on a specific topic.
But do you find it frustrating that you like all this LLM talk and all this AI talk that you're not sharing your opinion directly like that, or do you get your opinion?
I don't, because I'm helping shape my team's opinion. Like my team, particularly on the customer service side of my team, they know that I've done this job. They know that I've been in the world, as an analyst for more than 20 years, but also just broadly in CRM and customer service for 30. Like, they trust that I know what I'm talking about, even if I don't know exactly what this vendor is doing at that moment, right? Like, we were talking about old movies, so you can pretend you're Dooley Wilson and sing "The Fundamental Things Apply," right? Like, the fundamentals aren't changing here. So being able to help shape a broader set of people is perfectly satisfying for me. Every once in a while, there's something where I'm like, man, you're wrong. I just need to shoot off my mouth, and I'll write a blog, and then I just won't post it. Like, the act of writing it is good enough.
Now, we've seen a few analysts like Simon, for example, at Gartner, that have gone to the vendor side, went to Avaya. and we've seen a number of analysts come from the vendor side. You're one of the few that's done both.
Yeah.
Which of those transitions to the vendor side or away from the vendor side into being an analyst, which do you think is the more interesting or easy? Which is the easier transition?
Well, it was easier for me to go from being a vendor to being an analyst, but that's because I'd been an analyst before. So it was just transitioning back.
Yeah.
The thing that I discovered, and I've talked to some other analysts who went to the vendor side, is that you have the analyst cachet, or at least the patina of cachet, for like 6 months, and people will listen to you because you have that outside perspective. After that, you're just Joe Schmo at the vendor that you work at, right? And that was difficult because as analysts, you're used to people listening to you. They pay you to talk to them. They want to hear what you have to say, right? Like you are the product. And so once that wears off within the analyst, I mean, within the vendor world, yeah, your analyst halo is broken. That gets to be a bit tough. So that was the harder transition.
Interesting. All right. Well, I want to wrap up. I got one more topic here. I want to bring up a common ally of ours. Rest in peace, Brian Riggs. And you were very close to him. I was very close to him. I completely lost it when he passed. I didn't realize how much it had affected me, and I couldn't deal with it. A lot of things. I couldn't deal with a lot of it. I couldn't deal with going to the funeral, for example. I was not even an option. I know you went, and I'm so appreciative and so happy that you did. I think I've told you that before. I feel really like I blew that. I should have done that. But you told me a story I didn't know, that because I think of Brian as a UC guy, that Brian was somehow responsible for CCAS coverage. Explain that one to the world, if you can.
Yeah. So back in 2004, Brian and I were working at what was then Current Analysis, and I was doing CRM, and he was doing telephony infrastructure, which would become UC, but it's also contact center, right? I mean, we're talking about the transition back then to real SIP routing and so on. But we never actually brought those two elements together to think of it as like contact center until Current Analysis had some event out in the boonies of Virginia at some government facility, and we were like basically locked away for a week. And so we started talking about it. And from that, it was like, oh, wait, you got your CRM in my contact center, in my telephony. You got your telephony in my CRM.
Yeah.
It was like that. So we had that Reese's peanut butter cup kind of moment there. And from that was born the contact center coverage of Current Analysis, which ended up being where my career went, right? Again, I was a CRM analyst, like Siebel all the way, right? Like that had been my history. And that was a big switch. And it also kind of made Brian one of the few guys who was doing UC and contact center at the same time, because he understood that connection, because we had talked about it really early. I mean, like 2004 is a long time ago for this. So he got that pretty quickly and pretty early, and he kept that up for the rest of his career, doing both of those things.
Yeah, what a loss. He was such a great guy on so many levels, professionally and personally. And I miss him very much. Well, I think we actually went kind of long here, so I can't thank you enough for being my guest on InfluenceMe. Only the most influential analysts are invited on this.
I appreciate being lumped into that, even though you think I'm in the dark side as a manager of analysts. But there we go.
Well,
it means that my influence is got multiple prongs, because I've got minions who are doing the work for me.
Well, I wouldn't. You are still being broadcaster. Yeah, you mean colleagues? I think is the appropriate term. Oh. But
good call there. Good call.
All right. Well, again, thank you very much. And I think it's cocktail time. So thank you.
Indeed. Enjoy.